in just a couple minutes.
New message is received from Bishop Randall Holt. It is a multimedia message.
All right. Anyone else trying to connect to their audio that you can tell, Dion?
Just Colin.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. All right, do you all see the slide full? Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Christy Goldwire. I'm the Director of Program Operations for the Children's Trust of Alachua County. And you have joined our TeensWork Alachua RFP Bidders Conference. And we're excited to have you all here and participating in this Bidders Conference. We are going to be covering quite a few topics today. As you see here on the screen, the overview of the solicitation, the timeline, the minimum requirements to bid, terms, scope of services. We'll talk a little bit about the evaluation criteria, the model contract, data collection and performance measures, and then there will also be a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. The meeting is being recorded, and so please keep your microphones muted. And once we get to the question and answer section of the presentation, if you will use the raise your hand function, and that will notify us that you have a question. And all questions that we receive during this Bidders Conference will be included with the questions that are posted on the solicitation page on the website. Really quickly, this is a screenshot of our website. And you see our web address there at the top, and then our RFP can be found. You see the red button at the bottom that says bid/RFPs. That is where you will always find any RFP that the trust has released. Many of you are on our constant contact listserv, so you receive email notifications. But if you ever just want to check to see what funding opportunities are available through the trust, they will always be found on our website. I'll go ahead and get started with the overview of the solicitation. So the trust is seeking a contractor or contractors to manage the TeensWork Alachua Summer Youth Employment Program. This is a pilot project that aims to employ between 150 and 200 youth from ages 14 to 18 as summer interns during the summer. We are aiming to have youth be employees of a temporary staffing company, and their salaries will be paid through funds provided directly by the trust. The contractor will be responsible for marketing, outreach, worksite recruitment, participant recruitment, work readiness training, and job coaching. CTAC intends to award a contract or multiple contracts to an agency that will meet the qualification criteria and has successfully performed services on similar projects in the past. A total of $150,000 has been budgeted by the trust to administer the program, and costs to perform those services are expected to range between $700 and $1,000 per youth. Proposals in excess of $1,000 per youth will not be considered or will be considered non-responsive. This slide provides you with a timeline. This timeline can be found in the RFP. And please note that the last day to submit questions for this RFP is on the 7th. As I stated earlier, questions will be posted on the solicitation page for this RFP by close of business on Monday, January 10th. Today's questions, again, will also be included. Any questions that we post on the solicitation page will be posted as an addendum to the RFP. So that means anyone responding to the RFP will need to ensure that they print the addendum out, sign it, and submit it along with their response to the RFP. So just a couple things to highlight with the timeline. The submission deadline for this RFP is January 14th by 3 p.m. And all responses need to be submitted to the procurement email address that can be found in the RFP. There will be, after the solicitation deadline, there will be a review process for the review team, and that is January 17th through the 21st. The review team will hold a public discussion of the responses on January 28th, and the release of the recommendations to the board will take place on February 7th for board member discussion at the board member February 14th. And we are aiming to have final contracts in place by March 1st. The minimum qualifications or minimum requirements to bid, there are 4 of them. And that is that all proposed services must take place in Alachua County. Applicants must be currently qualified to conduct business in the state of Florida. Applicants cannot be a charter school, cannot be a public school, as public schools and charter schools do not qualify for trust funding. And all applicants that are a 501c3 organization must be validated in the Community Foundation of North Central Florida Selectic Hub.
And Christy, I put the link for that philanthropy hub in the chat box for everyone who's not familiar with it.
Thank you, thank you. For terms of service, the initial contract for this RFP will be March 1st through September 30, which is the end of our contract year. And renewals are at the sole discretion of the Children's Trust Board, but the renewal dates are here for your review as well. The scope of services. So what I did here was provided you with all the headings for the scope of services, and I will review each of these for you on the bidders conference as well. So here you see the target population, participant selection and assessment, the work readiness training, site recruitment and selection, hiring, onboarding and payroll, service time, staffing, outreach communication, and data collection requirements. And again, I am going to go through each of these for you. For the target population, eligible participants are youth in Alachua County, again, 14 to 18 years old, who are enrolled in Alachua County High School, high school's general education development programs, or a high school equivalency program. Participants will be recruited directly by the contractor and selected in a competitive process designed by the contractor as well. Youth must meet the age eligibility requirements on the start date of the program and throughout the period that the youth is participating in the program. Contractors are expected to recruit participants throughout the county and will be expected to demonstrate how youth in both the urban center and the rural areas will be served by this program. The contractor is responsible for the recruitment and assessment of program participants. The contractor should propose the number of participants to be recruited and shall assess participants' career interests, past work experiences, developmental needs, and future goals, which would inform summer work-based experiences. The contractor shall use an assessment to identify areas where participants may need additional services or support to help identify next steps for youth participants after the program has ended. And at the end of the program, participants should be given information and resources for next steps. For youth who complete high school and are not continuing to a post-secondary education or training, or for youth who will age out of the program, the contractor should refer them to other workforce development resources. It is our expectation that the contractor will develop paid pre-employment workshops and work readiness trainings. These trainings should take place before participants begin job interviews. At the end of the work readiness training, each participant must have a professional resume, which will be referred to hiring employers, and the participant should be prepared to interview for available positions. Contractors are encouraged to propose soft skill trainings that include instruction for youth to learn how to self-regulate their emotions, communicate effectively, and foster positive relationships with peers, supervisors, family, and other community members. Contractors should also address the following topics with youth, and that's getting the job, which should include resume writing, interviewing skills and mock interviews, workplace culture, which should include communication, conflict resolution, team building, etiquette, and attire, financial literacy, which should include opening bank accounts, budgeting, handling credit and debt, investments and saving, and career and higher education exploration, which should include interest assessments, career pathways, college choice, college applications, and financial aid. The contractor should cover all of these topics in the curriculum, but may adapt the content to the specific needs and interests of the population served. The contractor is responsible for recruiting work sites and should propose the number of work sites to be recruited. The contractor shall develop a work site application process and a work site agreement. And then any proposed work site shall be reviewed and approved by the Children's Trust. We expect that there would be an orientation for work site supervisors work site supervisors or staff to work with the participants. Work sites must be vetted for appropriateness and professionalism of the job opportunity and safety issues. CTAC does reserve the right to monitor all placements through this program as well. In all cases, participants shall be considered employees of the temporary staffing company decided by CTAC, and the contractor must work with the designated agency and comply with all applicable employment laws and regulations, including but not limited to laws governing the hours that minors may work. Within the RFP, you will find a link to the State of Florida Department of Labor. There's information there about the standards for hours of minors and the number of hours that they can work. So that link is provided to you within the RFP. And also the contractor shall be responsible for ensuring that work sites comply with employment laws and regulations. The contractor shall provide a worksite monitoring process to ensure adequate training sessions are provided by the supervisor and or the coach. It is our expectation that the contractor will coordinate the application and interview process between the worksite and the youth. All youth shall be paid at least a minimum wage of $10 an hour. Contractors may propose a higher wage, but must describe the reason the higher wage is necessary and how that higher wage will benefit the program. Final hiring and placement decisions will be at the work site's discretion, but the contractor shall ensure that the participant is properly onboarded and receiving timely and accurate payment for the hours worked during their summer intern placement. At a minimum, the contractor shall employ a program director, full-time or part-time, and that position must have a bachelor's degree or higher and 1 year of previous related experience. Job coaches, whether full-time or part-time, must also have some college or higher and some prior related work experience as well. The contractor can propose other positions to support the program and must explain the necessity of these positions within their response. We also want the contractor to provide and propose a ratio for the coaches and explain the ratio and explain how the ratio will be efficient. Please also remember that background screens are required, and the contractor must screen all staff and working directly with youth in accordance with the Florida statutes. For outreach and communication, the contractor is responsible for developing the marketing plan and promoting TeensWork Alachua throughout the county, not only to youth, but to the parents and potential worksite employers. And the last item within our data collection, the scope of services headings is the data collection. All contractors funded will be required to collect the following data, and that is the youth application, inclusive of demographics, youth and parental consent and image releases, youth attendance, and youth and supervisor satisfaction surveys. Later on within the presentation, there will be additional information provided from Bonnie, where she'll talk a little bit more about data collection, performance measures, as well as reviewing the logic model. Next is our evaluation criteria. All proposals that we receive will be independently reviewed and scored by a team of reviewers that may include trust staff, experts in the field, and trained volunteers. Using the evaluation criteria, the reviewers will assess the soundness and completeness of each proposal, as well as the vendor's capacity to effectively deliver what is proposed. And as you can see here on this slide, the areas, the criteria is past record of experience or record of past experience, risk, financial stability, project plan, subcontracting, and price. Here, I would like to introduce Dion Carruthers, who is one of our contract managers, and Dion will be providing an overview of CTAC's model contract and their contracting experience and process through the trust.
Thanks, Christy. Good morning, everyone. Thank you guys for joining us today. As Christy mentioned earlier in the timeline, on February 14th, the staff will ask the board to grant the executive director permission to negotiate contracts for those providers who have passed the required minimum requirements for scoring after reviewers have reviewed. Upon those contract negotiations, we would then, as contract managers, start to work on the contracts with the agencies. If you look at the RFP, or if you're not familiar with our contracts, on page 20 of the RFP, we have a model contract attached to the RFP for you guys to review. When we do those contracts, we're required to have at least 2 signatures from each agency to sign those contracts once we send those out. We send those out electronically through Adobe for signature. That's how they get routed for signatures and come back to us. Upon completing all the signatures, you will get a copy of that signed contract for your own records. And that way we will have an established time frame. I know Christy said we're trying to shoot for March 1st to have all those contracts signed and done so you guys can start doing that work. Also on that contract, there will be attachments. One of the attachments is insurance. So if you're going to be transporting any youth with your program, you must make sure your insurance covers transportation costs as well as compensation for employers in your insurance. That will be one of the deliverables that will be due on your first month of requesting funds. And speaking of deliverables, those will be items that we will discuss during contract negotiations that you will submit also with your application, but we will go review those deliverables so we can come up with an agreement on what's reasonable collecting of deliverables for each agency's model program. So that also will be attached with your contract as well as an attachment. But if you go into the RFP, starting at page 20, you will see the model contract in there if you're not familiar with our contracts. And remember to always try to have at least 2 signatures available. So when we send out the contract for signatures, we have 2 people to sign that contract. All right. If you have any questions on the contract, you can ask me now. Okay. So I guess we'll go to the next slide now, Christy, and I'll pass that along to Bonnie to.
Ian, you had Michelle Clow.
Yes, thank you. So this contract is really just for our review to be familiar with it in case we're awarded the grant, the award.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and the certificate of insurance, do you need that submitted with the RFP or with the contract?
You can submit that as your first deliverable after the contract is done and signed. It's not required until you submit for reimbursements on your first reimbursement.
And that would include our liability limits also?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry with my screen on full, I couldn't see it. Anybody else have it? Thanks, Bunny. Anyone else have a hand up or a question? All right, I'll let you take the next slide, Bunny.
Okay, I was gonna go ahead and share my screen if okay, so what I have up now and what you should be seeing is the logic model for TeensWork's Alachua. And so this is our first time funding TeensWorks and our first time funding summer youth employment. So we're hoping to learn a lot from the experience of implementing it for the first time in this county. And so this visual, which is part of the RFP, kind of depicts the logic or the goal between the goals and what we hope to implement in the inputs and the activities outputs. We hope this to be a partnership. We're definitely looking for you to add any expertise or recommendations to the project plan component of your proposals. So, but we wanted to sort of state out there what the vision is and what we see as potential opportunities for us to learn about how it's being implemented, how well it's being implemented, and how much children are participating in different elements related to the work sites and the supervision and the attendance. So we're hoping to learn a lot from this and looking forward to your partnership in developing a good way for implementing this as part of the plan. So for this one, our ultimate goals that we're looking to touch on with this initiative are that children are learning what they need to be successful, and that children are living in a safe community. And then we have our strategies, that one of those strategies under the learning is that we want to support career exploration and preparation. And we want to support initiatives for the safe community that are preventing delinquency and truancy and supporting violence prevention. Past research has shown that these type of programs do that. So we're excited about bringing this opportunity to the community. So starting at the other end, though, we do know that arrest rates in Alachua County are disproportionately higher, and that unemployment stood about 10% for youth last summer, when youth were in their prime of looking for summer employment. Our inputs are the CTAC funding, and then also that local businesses and proposers will partner with us to implement the programs. The activities is outlined in the RFP, so I won't go in there, but as far as the outputs, some of the measures that we're looking to capture for this project is to look at the number of youth hired for employment opportunities, look at the number of hours that youth are working, the work readiness training as a specific component, the number of work sites, with one of the questions being, how is this opportunity better than youth just going out to get a job on their own? How is this providing more support? So that kind of speaks into the quality of the work sites and the hours of supervision, the coaching, the training. So how is this providing a more supportive employment and removing some of the barriers that youth might otherwise experience would it have not been for this program? One of the best measures as we get to the how well and better off that we've seen is if youth retained in the employment for the entire duration of the program. So say if the program is 6 to 8 weeks, what percentage of the youth that started out are ending at the end of the program that completed all weeks of the employment experience or the internship experience. We also are looking to hear from the voices of the youth themselves through a satisfaction and survey at the end of the program to learn how satisfied they were with their work site, with their supervisor, what their perceptions are on the skills they've gained and the experience overall. We know that this program will benefit the youth by them being able to earn a wage. So we're looking at to report on the amount of money earned by the youth and their gains in both the work readiness skills and the financial literacy. These are the performance measures that we have, which mirror what we have up here with the outputs and these two columns, the outputs in the short term and intermediate terms, the how much is, the how well, and the better off, mirror what's in here on, I'll make my screen bigger. So the number of youth hired, the hours worked by the team, the hours of readiness training attended by the team prior to the start of the employment experience, the number of work sites, the hours of supervision provided to the team, and the training and support provided to work site supervisors. So those are all how much indicators that we could look to see how much of this program is being implemented and to report on that. And then for how well, there's the retention in employment. That means that they are working all 6, 8, however many the weeks are that are being proposed, the quality of the site, that there's a measurement for measuring that, and then the supervisor quality measurement, and that the youth are receiving the supervision and mentorship. We have all these as TPD. These are things that you can elaborate in your proposal. And so this is something that we look to see, that we look to speak more about as we receive proposals and as we get into contract negotiation. For the better offs, they're parallel what was shown before. that they're gaining skills, knowledge, and that they're earning money that will benefit them. This is kind of maps out more of there's the how much, but then there's how are you going to measure that? Of course, we're open for your input and expertise in terms of the measures and the tools for measuring this. As far as, you know, if there's a youth satisfaction survey or a job skill improvement or financial literacy, that's part of the models that you propose. If you have a tool that you'd like to recommend for this, we're open to you proposing what you feel is best to measure these concepts in terms of measuring site quality, measuring supervisor quality, and some of the other things that are on the measures. So this is sort of, and then the last part is the tools or the data to be collected, the data and reporting. So the job site, that would be the first thing that would be due. That would be a finalized list of all job sites and the name, the description of the work performed, the address, site supervisors. So this would be a template that you would submit after the sites are identified. The youth application, that would be a tool to collect information on the youth that are being served. So, and that would be due as the youth are applying to the program as the application period ends. And then the other data elements that are important are the activities and attendance, the training and assessments. That would be the pre-post on the knowledge gains, work readiness, and specifically the financial literacy component as well. The youth satisfaction, which would come at the end of the program, where the youth would be able to give their perceptions and insights about the program. There would be a site monitoring tool where the staff would go out and monitor the hours of supervision, the quality of the site, the work site, the number of teens being supervised, and whether they're getting what they need to get in terms of supervision and support from their supervisor. And the last would be the supervisor satisfaction, where the supervisor could give their perception and insight on the program. So again, we have a lot of TPDs on this too, because we're looking for your input and expertise on what you recommend for these tools and how that might look. These are elements that we're asking to be collected. The one for work history, the main thing we're looking for is whether or not this is the youth's first employment experience, whether they have any previous formal work experience, or this is their first one. So we're looking for something that to be learned. This is all information we're asking that the contractors collect, but anything that is identifying, such as first or last name, we're not asking that to be submitted to us for evaluation purposes, but we are asking that this is information that is collected for your own operational purposes and for some demographics for us to be able to report on in aggregate. And then in addition, all the other elements to support us being able to calculate and assess the performance measures that I've previously mentioned. So that was a lot, and I'm happy to take any questions.
This is our overall question and answer period. So if you have any questions about any of the information that we've provided to you today, feel free to raise your hand, or we'll call on you so that you can unmute yourself. And it looks like Michelle has a question.
I do, thank you. In the RFP, you mentioned that this CTAC will choose the payroll company, the temporary staffing company. If the contractor has capacity to provide payroll, could we include that in our budget? Could we make that part of our proposal?
Let me address that. Let me address that. Yeah, I'll address that one. We're going to be looking for an addendum on the website either later today or tomorrow around 3 areas. One is the issue of payroll and staffing, where we'll allow more flexibility, either a temp staffing company selected by us or direct payment to the employer, which means that they could fill out a agreement where CTAC would reimburse the employer, or if the contractor also wants to propose to do that, you can also propose to do that, but that would be a
message is received from DeWitt Lewis. Message is Wayne, ask your question now.
No, that would be a separate part. That wouldn't be part of this. We could do that, but that wouldn't be part of this particular budget. It would be handled separately.
So should we submit a second separate budget for that?
I think what you would propose is to say that you have the capacity to manage the payroll for the students. And then separately, we would, once we decide who are going to be the contractor or contractors, that would be step 2 of working out the payment arrangement for the students. Just to be real frank, it's difficult to find a temp staffing company that'll handle 14 to 18-year-olds. And so we're still working that out. So we're going to allow more flexibility in the payment arrangements between the youth and the employer. We're going to allow more flexibility in who the employer of record is, I guess is the best way to say it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yes, in reference to the deliverables and data collectibles, collection tools, on page 45, are the collectible tools, are they due on January 14th, or are they due on this date that's listed in the activity column? And for example, it says here in youth applications, it's due on June 15th. Do we need to have those applications in place by January 14th?
No, the tool would need to be designed in advance of collecting when you would want to open up collecting of the data, but the actual data of who the applicants are, what their demographics are, that data should be all collected by the 15th, because summer this year would start, I believe, at the very beginning of June, I think, or maybe even the end of May is the end of school this year for teens. So we would think that teens would have, that the application period would be open, maybe starting in May, and then, it would be closed by the beginning of June, and that, or sometime in June, depending on what you propose, but that the data would be all collected for all the youth that had applied would be done by June 15th. So that would be when the data was sort of finalized on all applicants for the youth employment.
Thank you.
To follow up with that, then would you want a sample of the application submitted with the RFP?
Right.
That would be great. That would be excellent.
I believe that's addressed in the submission section. If you have MOUs, whatever you have, you could submit samples and it won't count against your pages.
Okay.
I
have a quick question about pages. Sorry. In the response where you have everything listed and you say you want it in that order, like target population and all of those, do you want the description of what you put as target population in the response also, or just the heading?
No, just the heading.
Okay.
This is DeWitt, and I have a follow question regarding tools that have been listed in the RFP. And I want to be very specific here. There are several tools that will be required in this RFP. Samples of those tools, especially the data collection tools, the surveys, pre and post assessments, many of those CTAC must approve. So my question is, at the date of submission, which is January 14th, are all deliverable tools and samples required to be included in the submission?
Bonnie, can you take a look at your page?
Yeah, I'm looking at section 4, which is the project plan, and then there's A through I. So there's, you know, part I, you would really want to specify how you're going to collect data to satisfy the data and reporting requirements of this contract. So that you would want to talk about that. If so you would want to speak to that. I think the more detailed and thorough, if you know, the more suggestions, or if you have expertise on tools that you'd recommend, that would be great. That would strengthen your proposal, in my opinion. And then for project plan part 4B, it talks about participant selection and assessment. That would be where, if I were doing this, I would want to really go into detail about that process and describe that in detail. So I think to some extent, the more detail and the more thorough and quality the submission is in that area would be better. Does it all need to be 100% finalized? Will we talk about this and maybe refine it? Yes, that's possible that we might go with you know, because there might be multiple contractors, and if there is a tool that one contractor proposes that would make sense to use across all programs, that might be something that we ended up doing. Please propose what you think is the best way to collect the data, what you see as the best applications. But if we get multiple proposers, we're going to look at all of them and kind of see which one really would make sense across all, because we would want to, as the CTAC, evaluate this as a whole initiative, not as you know, so we'll want to make sure that they're in alignment as much as it makes sense to do so.
So to follow, we must provide a narrative as to how we, or a description as to how we propose to assess. We don't necessarily need to submit a hard copy of the tool that we're going to use. That doesn't necessarily have to be in the submission by the 14th of this month. Just in the narrative, we must describe what will possibly be used. And I suspect you will assess whether or not you approve our approach or not approve our approach, or we must provide a sample hard copy of the tool. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, you could do either, or you can if it's a tool that's out there, or if it's a tool that that's specific to maybe your work readiness training, you could say that there will be a work readiness pre or post. You know, you could reference that in the narrative, or if you want to provide a tool or a link to the tool, that would all be acceptable.
Are there any additional questions? No. There's okay, Addison.
Yeah, good morning. I had a question about the cost per student and was wondering, that cost per student, is that the amount that will be allocated to the student that will be working? For example, who is actually the money that the contractor receives? Is that money going directly to the student, or is the company or the place of work or internship, is that company responsible for paying that student? And I guess that's the cost per child as far as, so that was one question. And then the second question.
Can we do that one
Okay.
first? Okay. So the cost per child is the cost referenced in this solicitation, is the cost to do the work of this RFP, recruiting sites, applications, marketing the program, all that stuff. It has nothing to do with the wages paid to the students. The wages paid to the students are separate. So all of that money would go to the agency.
So I guess that's a follow-up to that is, who is actually paying the student and where is that money coming from?
Money is coming from the Children's Trust, paid through either a temp agency or whoever the employer of record ends up being. Right now in the RFP, there's one option through a temp agency, but we're going to expand the options to where the Children's Trust would pay the employer directly through some kind of payment arrangement, or if the company or companies or agencies hired to market the program also have the capacity to do that, they would be paid through us as well. So they would submit payroll, and then we would reimburse them just like a payroll company. That's a separate payment arrangement.
Okay, is that included in this RFP? And
it is
as
not.
Far as,
it is
and
not.
then I think that would be helpful to know for going forward. But then second, is there limitations or boundaries on the cost per hour that the student is allowed to make, the number of hours, the total limit of gross funds accrued over the summer? That way the organization or I think that plays a big role in what types of internships, what types of jobs, what types of placements that these students will be going to. You know, are there limitations on or boundaries or quantitative numbers that we can look at to determine that?
Okay, well, you asked a lot of questions, so I'm going to go one by one. On page 6B, section 2B, it says the total of $150,000 has been budgeted by the CTAC to administer this program. This solicitation is to select a contractor to manage the marketing, outreach, worksite recruitment, participant recruitment, work readiness training, and job coaching for the program participants. And then it says the costs, it gives a threshold of costs per student that we're expecting to see. And then the last sentence is that youth will be employees of a temporary staffing company and their salaries will be paid through funds provided directly by CTAC. So we feel that that's about as clear as we can explain that part, okay? Now, as far as
limitations on those.
Yeah, so part of the evaluation process is the wages, okay? And obviously we have an overall budget for the program. And when you go to the evaluation criteria, the wages paid to students, and one of the reasons we've done it like this is because we do have a budget. So wages paid to students as a minimum $10 by law, and then you can propose more, but it's one of the objective criteria. Can someone tell me what page the criteria is on? Let's see. So I'm flipping through the RFP here. I think it's on page 7. Okay. So you can see there's subjective criteria, objective criteria. So you can propose higher wages, but your proposal for wages is ranked against everyone else's proposal in a formula that's described in the RFP. And if you're higher than what everyone else is, you're going to receive an objectively lower score based on the formula laid out in the RFP. Ditto for the participant recruitment costs. So that's where one of the factors has to be price. And so you can propose whatever you want, but it will impact your scoring. So that's how we account for that. There's also laws about how much kids can work and all of that. But I believe somewhere we have, I think it's in the scope of service in the back on section page, I'm looking in, starting on page 37, and I'm looking at okay, if you look on page 39, okay, starts on page 38, section F, service time, summer work-based experiences shall include up to 25 hours of paid work per week at the minimum wage or higher for 6 to 8 continuous weeks in June or July. So up to, so not 40, not 60 hours, up to that, we're going to pay for up to 25 hours in June or July. Program hours and respective services may take place any day of the week, including weekends. Contractor shall choose a schedule that accommodates the needs of participants and the work site. This flexibility enables contractors to enroll participants who must attend summer school. So there are the parameters of the working hours and days and number of weeks and all of that in the RFP. So it's all a careful reading of the RFP will answer most of these questions.
Right, so just to be clear though, they are not allowed to go over 25 hours. I know is a suggested rate of $10 an hour, but can they be paid more? You know, is there a budget limit that's based on those quantitative numbers that are in the RFP?
So
I guess was my question.
Yeah. So once we get the proposals, we have a budget for this program. Your wages that you require, that you're going to propose will be part of the evaluation criteria. It won't be the only thing. It'll be one of them. And then if the agency or agencies that are selected, we will then sit down and have to negotiate based on what's proposed and the number of kids and the wages, how much we can contract for to stay within our budgeted amount or ask for an increase in the budget. But the parameters are laid out on page 38 and 39. So we're not going to pay for more than 25 hours a week in this proposal.
Gotcha. All right, that helps with those questions. And I guess the last set of questions would be just how many students are you looking to target through this opportunity? And because I think organizations that do have high schoolers like say ACES in Motion, we're trying to decide whether or not we apply for this funding opportunity or that we assist whoever does get the contract, because we have over 40 high school students that would be eligible for this opportunity. However, the capacity to manage this type of funding would be, you know, we'd rather somebody else manage it and we send the students. So it'd be a lot easier for whoever does get the contract that we just have a list of students that they could manage and put on site. We also employ high school students throughout the summer as well. So we're just trying to see if this funding is better suited for somebody that this is their wheelhouse of recruiting and managing students, or if it's something we need to apply directly to so that we manage that in-house. Yep. So I guess if there's any guidance on that strategy of, you know, we're seeing who gets the contract and working with that contractor, or being the contractor ourselves, because it's been said there could be one contractor or multiple contractors. And so we're trying to decide what this actually, you know, what this funding is intended to do.
Okay, well, that's an excellent. So to your first question of how many youth are being targeted, it's between 150 and 200 youth. And that's covered on page 6, section A in the overview. I can't really advise on strategies. However, what you may be asking is, do you want to propose to be the contractor that does the recruiting of marketing, outreach, worksite recruitment, participant recruitment, work readiness training, and job coaching, or do you want to be a worksite? And if you're a worksite, in that case, whoever wins, you would work with them on making sure that they can fulfill all of the requirements for youth that may be employed at your site. And whether or not you're a worksite would be really a discussion between first you and whoever wins the, I say you, I mean you in general. I mean, it would be a discussion between the worksite and the contractor who wins this, or contractors that win the solicitation, and then, you know, with final approval based from CTAC on work sites. And we're basically looking for, you know, will the kids be safe there? Do you understand the legal requirements of employing teens and all of that stuff? That's what we'll be looking for. So, you know, we can't answer what's best for you, but, you know, what we were looking for the agency or agencies that win the win this bid, so to speak, is that they can do the marketing, outreach, worksite recruitment, participant recruitment, work readiness training, and job coaching. So that's the main functions that we're looking for from the contractor that wins.
All right, that's very helpful. Thank you for the answers to those questions.
Yep, thank you. Good questions.
Are there any additional questions? If not, that will conclude our bidders conference for the TeensWork Alachua RFP. Thank you so much for joining us. We will work to get the video up on the solicitation page by the end of this week, where you all will be able to review the recording. Thank you guys, and remember that the last day to submit a question is on the 7th. Thank you.
And be sure to check the website for addendums, please, probably every day, if you don't mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.